Kim.
All right. So let's just, once again, welcome everybody. So glad to see you. We've had some RSVPs that they weren't able to make it. Dr. Snyder's not able to be with us. Pam, how do you say Pam's last name? Pam at Jacobs Marchucci, is that it? Anyway, she works with Ken Snyder. Ken is doing a craniotomy or something today. So, I mean, I have to tell you, I've heard of a lot of excuses in my life, but I get this text from Ken Snyder last week, and we had a meeting. Robert knows about it. We had a meeting scheduled for Wednesday afternoon at 2:00, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm wondering, can we move our meeting to Thursday at 2:00? I have an urgent craniotomy I have to do." I mean, what kind of an excuse is that? I mean, really, So, anyway. So it's so good to see everyone here. Dan, are you in Rochester?
I am.
Excellent. David in New Mexico, Kim McKiernan. So let's see. Why don't we just go around real quick? Robert, we have Tanya. Tanya, do you know the rest of the gang? Tanya, you do. Kim, do you know the rest of the gang?
I don't. I haven't met Tanya, and I haven't met Robert.
All right.
I think, Dan, we met a while ago. I don't know if you remember, but yeah, I think just two people.
Okay, so Tanya, I want to just say quick hello to Kim.
Sure. Hi, Kim. I'm the director of accreditation at the Jacobs School of Medicine.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Dr. Gatewood and Dr. Mishra will be doing their presentation today. So just a couple of things. I'm thinking, guys, that we in December. Yes, Robert, over to you. Yes.
Well, I wanted to ask Kim what she does.
Yes.
Sure. So my background is I'm graduated from Buff State Creativity Program, and I combine creativity with appreciative inquiry. And I work with a lot of startups to help them develop their brand in future strategic planning using appreciative inquiry and creativity. So I've been very fortunate to do a number of projects with Dr. Mishra.
Is your work here in Buffalo or?
Buffalo and all over the world, actually.
Huh.
So many different kinds of companies.
Mm-hmm. Has any of it been connected to the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus and the businesses that they're, starting up there?
Yes, definitely. I'm very hooked into the startup community, and we actually did a joint program at the dig site with Dr. Mishra and the residents, and so I was, for quite a while, I was in the co-working space there. So I know a lot of the people, and I've worked with some of the clients there.
Excellent.
Good stuff. So we will go till 9:00 this morning, and I think we schedule our next meeting. We take December off because of the holidays. I'm looking at scheduling our next meeting on January the 19th. Like that's the third Thursday. So if we can kind of put that in there and let that ruminate as Dr. Gatewood and Dr. Mishra are doing their presentation today. This is the part 3 of Medical Education Moonshot, originally initiated by Dr. Gatewood, redefining medical education. And Dr. Mishra is teaming with Dr. Gatewood today. So
it's the other way around.
What's that? It's the other way around. Okay.
Mishra's coattails here.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Gatewood is teaming with Dr. Mishra. It all works together. And so let's go ahead and start. And once again, thank you, everybody. And Dr. Yates, thank you for getting up so early and stoking the fire out there in New Mexico. So here we go. Here we go to Dr. Mishra, and where we go.
Just do this. All right. So again, thank you, Dr. Firestein. And again, I want this to be a co-presentation, and thank you, Kim, for joining. We actually had a fun activity yesterday, and I asked Kim if she'd be joining us today. So this is really a combined presentation of the Buffalo Society of Creativity in Medical Education. I have you all as as presenters here. And Dr. Gatewood really started us off with his vision. And I'd like to kind of take it forward. And I don't need to talk about the agreements for a brave and safe space here because we are all, we are among friends and everybody is comfortable with each other. The two of my quotes that I'd love to put there is when I is replaced by we, when illness becomes wellness. And I feel that really strongly in this company. And also Hope has two beautiful daughters. They are Anger and Courage. Anger, the way things are, and Courage that they don't remain that way. And Dr. Gatesford started us off with this novel approach to improve community health and healthcare delivery, and told us to look at the 10,000 feet rooftop and street level views. And we'll start off with the 10,000 feet view. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gatewood because Kim wasn't there for the last presentation. If he could quickly summarize that 10,000 view. So over to you, Dr. Gatewood.
Oh, thank you, Archana. So if you remember, the idea was to, we started with sort of revamping, transforming medical education with the students, the medical students, the residents, the fellows, as the primary interest or concentration. But in thinking about it, we started to think about maybe we should make this broader. So we presented creating a hub and spokes type integrated model with UB, community healthcare services, community resources, and community teaching programs coming together to form the hub and spokes design with one sort of common mission, and that is value-based medical and healthcare learning and teaching, not only for medical students, residents, and fellows, but really spreading it out into the community. Let's see, can I advance? No, thank you. So this is what it would look like. In the center is a UB-led medical and healthcare education hub. And they're one of the what's called in this book, which I went to the book signing last night. Matt Estes, who manages the Buffalo Niagara Medical Center, had a book signing and talked about this book. And I've read a part of the book. I've not finished it, but it was so interesting because it's exactly what this is all about. It's about identifying what's called anchor institutes who come together with a common mission, and they develop what's called an innovation district. In this case, the anchor institutes would include UB, but they would include other anchor institutes. And unlike the medical center, I would see these anchor institutes as being integrated out into the community. So it's not one geographic area, it's more decentralized. And then the spokes are also all out in the community. It's not just around the medical center, but it's really out into all of Western New York. And what it is to bring health and healthcare education to everybody, to democratize it. What we've done in the past is we've concentrated again on teaching medical students, residents, and fellows. And then they go out and they practice medicine. The problem is that we're not really making that much ground on really making us healthier. In fact, more and more people have chronic disease than ever before. So I know it's sort of an overused term, but you've heard people talk about changing our present sick care system into a real healthcare system. And I personally feel that the only way we can do that is to get out into the community, because patients only spent a very, very, very small time in their lives in our office or in the hospital. The rest of the time they're out in the community. And Rogers talked about this in his books. You can come up with the greatest ideas, but if the environment is not good, the ideas aren't going to work. And also, we've been waiting for, gene therapy and all these things to make us better, but it just hasn't materialized. We've got to try to work further upstream in prevention. And when I say prevention, I don't mean screening so you get early detection. I mean preventing disease altogether, and we can do that. So anyway, so I don't want to take up Archana's time, but that is the key thing here is to integrate medical education out into the community and help everyone out in the community and create a real healthy culture. I'll end with this. I started with the NASA moonshot, where the United States kind of got together and said, we're going to be the first country to put a man on the moon. And that's exactly what we did. We got government and private to come together on an incredible project to put a man on the moon. And in the 60s, nobody thought you would be able to do that. But we were able to do it, and we were the first country to do that. What we need to do now is do what NASA just did. They sent the DART spaceship up to blow up an asteroid. And that is exactly what we're talking about. It was to protect the world from being hit by an asteroid. So that is the idea of prevention. So let's start thinking about not just the moonshot of educating, terrific doctors, but also work on general prevention for the community. So I'll end there and let Archana take over. Thank you, Archana.
Thank you, Dr. Z, for your vision and really articulating, the steps forward. And I got to give Dr. Sheehan the credit for introducing me to this Reimagining the 21st Century University by Ada Sharma. And I think, again, what appealed to me in this was this vertical and horizontal integration about not just deepening the whole person, where we not just use our head or our hands, but also have this transformational co-creation with the head, heart, and hand, but also broadening the whole system to going from where we are now in terms of the traditional individual learning to team learning to organizational change, but going from an ecosystem to an ecosystem where the whole system, as Dr. Gatewood talked about, is transformed. Because at this point, that's been one of our blind spots, the societal cultural transformation, and integrating that into medical education to really turn it into healthcare. And I think, again, from the same sort of author and his theory he talked about this 4.0 in learning and healthcare. So we went from a traditional teacher-centric to now with not just learner-centric, but activating the deep sources of learning. And in healthcare, we are now at the point where we're not just at the doctor-centric or patient-centric, but we need to strengthen the sources of well-being in our patients and in people who are treating our patients. And I think the analogy is not to just add another app, but to upgrade our entire operating system. So it's about first sensing, knowing where our system is, what are we doing currently, and observing that, and then connecting that to our vision, and sort of really thinking through this process in concert with all the stakeholders that are involved. And I think if you don't know where you want to go, it's hard to get there, right? So I looked at what are the traits of an ideal doctor? And first, starting with the patient's point of view. And this is from 2006, where the impression of the patient, these were about 200 outpatients that were surveyed, and the traits that they looked at and wanted in their doctors were confident, empathetic, humane, personal, forthright, respectful, and thorough. We fast forward to 2022, and this is what the public thinks is a good doctor. And you can see that there are things that have changed given the way the world has changed, where having that online availability has become a part of what a good doctor is. Someone dutiful who is really that online health celebrity, an expert, but also a service physician. Because again, quoting Rachel Naomi Remen, it's not about fixing, it's not about helping, but what it is about service. But you're getting as much as your patient is or your community is. And again, one of the key elements was takes time, listens, and makes the correct diagnosis. I think that generous listening part we need to really focus on in this community. And then move to what does a physician think that makes a good doctor? And this is from 1996, where doctors talked about, the humanity or humaneness, medical knowledge, dedication, research, good relationship, management tasks. But what was interesting was that this empathetic behavior, which was considered the most important attribute for being a good doctor, was ranked last in the scale of being promoted. So our emphasis also needs to change. We have to really disrupt the system and assign value to what matters to our public, what matters to the people who are being trained. Fast forward to 2022, and this paper asked both patients and the public, and it ended up being that physicians did the first trait, the first most important trait, they did talk about humaneness and the humane approach, while the public was focused on being professionally knowledgeable. But as a second trait, again, they all kind of merged. So it is almost like we are on the same page in terms of what we want in our physicians. This is, an endeavor that Dan is aware of, that I was on this journey for about 2 years, where I got the second year students together. And asked them to sort of brainstorm who would be the ideal physician. And they made this graphic representation of an ideal physician. And what struck me, I was obviously amazed by their ability to really go deep, but a lot of these images were of Superwoman with capes. And the question is, are we really brainwashing them during training to become these superhero, workaholic, unemotional Lone Rangers? And, I think this concept is seeded before they actually get into medical school. So we have to even rethink of what should be our screening tool. And this struck me, one, because I'm a daughter of a professor of chemistry and love chemistry. And when I heard about, Dr. Maitland Jones being fired because students started this petition, although he had been a valued teacher, you start thinking about the focus of this generation. And also, we all know that organic chemistry was a screening tool. There were so many people who could have become doctors, who had the right sort of service mindset, but were weeded out because they didn't do well in organic chemistry. So should we rethink about the screening tools? And also, talking about not only getting into medical school, but once they are there, is this the right model that we are using? The Flexner report of 1910 transformed how medical education in United States was changed, and the gold standard there. One thing we don't focus on is that this method, or the report, contained all these racist and sexist ideas, and that focus led to closure of 5 out of the 7 historically Black medical schools. And had we not had that, maybe we could have had more Black physicians, and the health of the Black community in the United States wouldn't be where it is. Getting back to who's known as the father of medicine, Dr. William Osler, who was a Canadian physician, who also, although his name graces so many medical institutions, he too held racist views. I wouldn't be here speaking to you if people had followed what Dr. Osler said, because he was upset about the yellow and brown men who were beginning to swarm Canada, who he considered a white man's country. And I think when we are putting a vision together, Dr. Gateford, that should also be an important part of our vision, to make sure that the structural racism that exists is looked at what it really is. Although all of us have seen this pictorial representation here about what reality is, what equality is, what equity is, and what liberation is, I take I don't like the fact that the person here is shown as one with a short stature, because racism is, or even race to start off with, is a social construct, not a biologic one, where the people are, shorter or less less talented than others. It's us as a society who has chained them, who have given them all these roadblocks, while people stand on this privilege. And what we really need to do is to work through the medical system to disrupt this and really make up for these years of structural racism, which is within the fiber of our education. we also need to make sure that, there has been this focus of getting people who have been underrepresented into the medical school. But a lot of times we don't do justice to them or even others in the medical school. So we do need to nurture our trainees, because some of the strengths that lead them to get into the medical school, unless you nurture it, it can easily turn into vulnerabilities which can lead to burnout. And that's another thing that we have to keep in mind as we reframe our medical education. And we do need to incorporate the quintuple aim. So we started with the triple aim, which was improving patient experiences, better outcomes, lower cost. Then with the burnout epidemic, clinician well-being was included. And in 2021, health equity was made one of our aims. And that's something we do not need to lose sight of as we move into this new vision. So that was the 10,000 feet view. Getting to the rooftop view, one thing we do notice is that we work in silos. And we do need to break down these silos. I have good news there, because for one, in our medical school, we did get the Interprofessional Group Recognition Award. There have been strides made where all disciplines come together in spring and in fall. Over 1,000 students from all disciplines, including law, social work, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, you name it, they come together, and we've started this micro-credentialing to show that this is a skill that is needed. Medicine is teamwork. We also initiated the team STEP strategies, which really have been very successful. I was part of the pilot where we took people from all different professions, and 90 students were trained. And now I think facilitating these sessions, the simulation and the role play, so that we know how to truly work together. We learn how to provide mutual support. I tell the students, go ahead, cuss away, and cuss with not a double S. It's about show concern, say you are uncomfortable, and patient safety should be the top. So that is something, along with the other alphabet soup acronyms that are there, need to go from being, again, a jumble to being really accepted as a way of practice, so that we can change the culture. And Dr. Mecca, I hope she comes back soon and she is well and talks about this revision and redesign of the medical school curriculum, which is an exciting first step. Now, getting to the street level view, I thought the best way to do it would be to give my own, almost like the PDSA cycle that I have been doing, almost going from the macrocosm to the microcosm. And I have had this unique position to really go from the fellows as an attending in pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine, to students as the clerkship of advanced medicine, and also residents as associate program director. And one thing, as an intensivist, one thing I value is the teamwork and the realization that the patient and the family, their voices are the most important in healing. I've also realized, having experienced burnout myself, that a burnout is an individual response to a systemic problem. But in my journey, I realized that joy, health, and well-being are really not just an individual experience, but they are properties of groups of people. So it's the culture that we need to really nurture, of having an optimal team that will help us thrive as well as our institutions thrive. So with that in mind, and I regret that, I didn't have patients and families in these workshops. So I ran these 11 workshops at the VA. But one of the key things that I was really deliberate about was that not only were the trainees from different disciplines, but also nurses, pharmacists, respiratory therapists, and I taught together. So that was something that was important. And that's something that we need to, as Dr. Z's, Dr. Gatewood's vision of this like education, that is the silos breaks down, and nurses, social workers, pharmacists, everybody is trained together in the common disciplines. We need to make sure that even the teachers represent the different disciplines. And again, credit to Dr. Sheehan for sharing the CDC's factors that affect the health outcomes. And as you can see, the biggest impact is the socioeconomic factors, where our patients are born, where they live, which again is because of the redlining that has been, the norm for so long. Our clinical interventions really are a small part of the pie. So we do need to flip to the psychosocial bio model rather than the current biopsychosocial model, where honestly, the psychosocial part of it is almost, minuscule. The whole focus is on the bio part of that. So there is value in it. And I think, in my PDSA cycle, I've tried to bring that in my own microcosm by introducing the residents and students to this, like a game of life, which is a gamified way of working on how do you manage when you have limited resources. And we had blinded them. They didn't know which group they belonged to. They had a limited amount of money that was given to them, and every group. So there was one group which was a Black woman. There was one group which was, higher socioeconomic status. There was one group which was sort of a drug addict, and they had to, with the finances that were given to them, they had to navigate to get to, where they would go to school, what work they would do, what housing they would get, what medical care would they get. And it was really fascinating to see that, how puzzled they were. And there were a lot of aha moments where they didn't realize that their socio, their socio-psycho bio status has a huge impact on what diseases they develop and where they land up in the hospital. Last month, I did this walk in your patient shoes experience, which was a patient who was discharged from the hospital, and they had to follow the discharge instructions. And it was a diabetic with a high, glycosylated A1C level, hemoglobin level, and they had to bring it down. And the decisions they made, it was a person with housing instability. So all the decisions that they made led to what they ended up with in terms of the outcome, which was lowering the hemoglobin A1C level. It was interesting how when they were grappling through this, they didn't realize, although shelter was the cheapest, so that's what, and they again had limited resources, they all grabbed to get a shelter, but they didn't realize that they wouldn't have a refrigerator there to put their insulin in. So when it came to the drug that they would have to follow up, that was not available to them. I brought the community representation there with our community workers, with pharmacists from the community, dietitians from the community, who were their resources to help them make these decisions. And again, Dr. Sheehan introduced me to Heather Quigley, who does the ALICE presentation. And she was phenomenal in setting the tone for this session, where she talked about, the struggles that people go through. I also realized that, again, we have to first form that community. So within the medical school, for the last 2 years, I've been holding these talent show to get to know the person behind the faculty, the person behind the student, the fellow, the resident. And I also realized that despite all the efforts that you make to create these community immersion events, it has to be embedded in curricular time, because residents, fellows are busy. You can't expect them to show up if you don't value it enough to include it in the curriculum. So I have been able to embed some curricular time, although in my view, not enough, because you really make a living by what you get, but a life with what you give. So we have to make sure there are opportunities to do so. I'm so proud of our group who, again, the students have the UB Heals. I've included the residents in it too, the internal medicine residents. And we were able to raise funds to get 92 sleeping bags that we gave to the homeless. And that joy that you could see in their faces as we went to distribute this is phenomenal. And that's something we have to keep in mind as we talk about this community being part of the education. And it works both ways. We have to know about a community, and a community needs to know us, not just in those 15-minute visits or when they're hospitalized, when they're the most vulnerable, but during the times when they are in their home environment, where they are happy and healthy. Moving on, another PDSA cycle of mine was the planned, do, study, and act, was this dealing with uncertainty, because I felt that uncertainty is the most certain aspect of healthcare. And we are not comfortable with saying, I don't know, or even realizing that I don't know. So I use the museum as a method of, because museums are psychologically safe, and there's nothing right or wrong about art. So it was choosing specific pieces of art that could help me facilitate this conversation about uncertainty. And there were 3 themes: body, color, and end of life. And you could see, once again, loved those aha moments that I had and they had. Their sculptures told their story. So I had given them clay to work with, to make something that represented these times and their own emotions, feelings, and stories. Some even use the table covering as a canvas, as you can see there, along with their sculpture. They contributed, they listened generously, and they embraced uncertainty. So, and there's survey that I did at the end, so there was that assessment piece that showed us that it worked. Next, Kim and I partnered in this, where we took them back to the museum, but this was with a different objective. It was to make them realize that we don't perceive a lot of what we see. And this was, I would encourage all of you, if you're able to visit this installation by Sylvie Fortin, who, it's called I Don't Know You Like That, the Bodywork of Hospitality. And we've been in touch for the last 3 years as she was deciding on the installation to see how best we can serve our trainees by choosing works of art that can help them to really look at it. And Kim was the one who suggested to use a Kudo board to have that conversation going between the viewers and the artists. And I am so glad that we did that, because that board is growing by leaps and bounds as we speak. And I think the other thing is gamification. I want to say that I'm so grateful to Esmat Mamoon, who's a friend of mine, who introduced me to the gurus of creativity. And I worked with Dr. Firestein and Dr. Cabra in 2012. And that rope trick had me hooked, Dr. Firestein. And even though it took me 10 years to rope him in to share his wisdom with IIM residents, that laughter tells the story, and how to do the creative problem solving to improve the way, not just medicine, but the way we can improve our lives and the way we can change the culture. Because if you use CPS and gamification, there's more learner engagement, there's more retention, there's more sort of knowledge that you can get. There's the soft skills development of teamwork, outcomes, which ultimately will spill into the community. And it is so much fun. Believe me, I've used every gamification tool that there is that I could think of, starting with simple paper planes and snowballs, where during a lecture, I would get them to write questions based on what I was talking about. And this has gone on for over a decade. And they would then either make it into a paper ball and throw it to another person who would then solve the questions that they got. Or if they were talented, they would throw these, paper airplanes. And then morning report became fun. And I think Kim and I were there when we used appreciative inquiry to create these problem trees. What was wrong with how our residency was teaching? And then we made it an opportunity tree where they would envision what they wanted. And one of the things they felt was our method of teaching was boring. So out of that arose this methods, especially the escape room, was what I think was the most fun. And Erica Switek, who's again one of your graduates, that was the first escape room that I attended. And again, she hooked me to it. So there I was creating all kinds of escape rooms and having fun doing it. It was an immersive experience. It not only was fun, but as I was watching them navigate through the, challenges that were there, I saw the teamwork. I saw the students who would need support. And it could be done in person, with simulation, in a box. The virtual escape room, Dan saw me create this. I had my daughter help me create a virtual escape room for one of the talks that I was doing. And it just is so much fun. Creating the different puzzles. It just giving it a medical theme has been addictive. That's all I can say. This was a recent escape room about which was respiratory themed, and we just added, a little twist. The history was now given as a mirror image. Used different props to help them get to the final stage, which really is the debriefing. So they had 30 minutes to save patients. They learned about the different, how do you escalate oxygen therapy and acid-base problems, different ventilator modes. And I'm sure Albert Einstein, who said creativity is intelligence having fun, would definitely have dabbled in escape rooms if that was a possibility. I'm going to show you a quick this is one of our old escape rooms that was ACLS themed. We had, more flimsy props than we have now.
Yeah, yeah. And then this one towards that up here.
And that is what was the most fun, was that joy, the celebration. And I did want them to take that was the main thing I wanted them to take away, was that celebrate the small successes in life, enjoy that, because the profession that we've chosen is one that can get frustrating, but they have to know how to connect those experiences to real life. And I know what all of you will see here, but just for the fun of it, what words do you see? You can unmute yourself and shout it out. Or put it in the chat.
Opportunity is now here.
There we go. I expected that from you, Dr. Parsi, but many of our residents and students saw opportunity is nowhere. And it is important that we change that mindset. We really flip medical education on its head. And with that, I think it's time for us to really chat about the next steps. Virtually cannot offer you any treats or coffee, but time that we started really figuring out the next steps. How do we get disruptive? What models of change can we use? There was one, I'll share that with the group, is, there's a nice quick little video talking about the different models of change. And, again, all of you are much better equipped than I am with your MBAs and your masters in creativity and your years of experience and the changes that you've brought about. I know Dr. Sheehan's, his imprint in our school is something that's going to carry on for generations, even though I still can't believe he's moved to Rochester, but those seeds that he's planted are going to show the fruits. Dr. Firestein, I'm a living example of the seed that you sowed. Kim, your partnership is so invaluable. Dr. Z, your vision has really opened my eyes. And Dr. Yates, thank you for really bringing us together for this session. So I'm going to leave it up to the group now to really take us to the next step.
Well, I'll be happy to start, Archana. I just think there's a couple of things that you brought up. That was fantastic, by the way.
Amazing,
Really.
amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, the keys to me were, one is the biopsychosocial approach, not only to diagnosis, but also to treatment, which requires getting out, including the community, where the patients are living. The second thing is that medicine and healthcare is a team sport. You can't do it on your own. The third thing is, emphasizing health span. Again, transitioning from having to treat chronic illnesses, chronic diseases, manage those, to promoting vitality throughout life. We're just helping people limp along, and we should do a better job of not letting them get to that point where they're limping along. The last thing is making education fun and enjoyable. I mean, I think that's key. And also the practice of medicine and healthcare delivery, making it more enjoyable. We're seeing the consequences. I think we're only seeing the tip of the consequences right now. Just look here in Buffalo. We went through the two big hospital systems went through a prolonged negotiation between the nurses and the healthcare systems, almost to the point of striking. We have residency programs around the country where the residents are starting to unionize. And it's mainly because they're not happy with the situation that they're in. And this is going to continue unless we change things. I was talking to Dr. John Fadima just the other night about, the struggles that he and the residents go through every single day because of our healthcare system. So yeah, there's so many things, and thank you. Those were really great vignettes, and I think those are the things to start. Now, you asked about the steps, and I think you hit on the first step, Archana, and that is, I think we need to look at exactly, and this is probably already done, and I know Dr. Mecca's probably started this, but I think, again, looking at a more broad picture, not just the medical school curriculum, but everything that we're doing, is to look at what we have right now, and then we take it from there. But that would be my first step. And then the second step, that along with sort of identifying champions, get a group of champions, and then look at what we have. That would be the first sort of two steps together. And I'm anxious to see what other people think, because I'm just throwing that out there.
This is inspiring. I mean, I'm just so honored to be working with you folks. It is just so, Archana, I'm just so loving it. And I hope my daughter comes up here to be but this is just so terrific. And so, I mean, we're making this happen. There's what we're doing together, I think is moving this, will move this forward. So great stuff. Thank you. Thank you.
Dan or Kim?
Yeah, I mean, so what I love is that some things that kind of stuck with me today was, joy is best experienced by a community and a team. And that's something that we've become a very me-centered world. And you also have that, like, everyone's a learner, everyone's a teacher. And what you've brought back is creativity, fun, and joy, but you've also brought back curiosity, which has been lost as well. And it's something that we tend to forget about. Thinking about Robert's model brought me back to thinking about our friend Ken. And Ken had talked about, these Baldrige communities of excellence when I first met him. And I'm wondering whether it'd be worthwhile having Ken watch these presentations and then come to talk about how we can align this with becoming a community of excellence, because that's what I think we really want. We want to be the city of good neighbors, city of great health.
Well, Roger and I did meet with Ken and did go over some of the slides together, and he did bring up the Baldrige project and thought that it would be, am I right, that it would be a good
That's correct.
Sort of, combination? Roger, is that what
right? And then the work that you guys are doing, I mean, I must say it was a passionate interaction to see these two gentlemen talking about just the importance of what they're doing and the overlap. Yeah, and Robert, I think the overlap from his model and the Baldrige model and the stuff that he's starting to do now and your work, there's stuff there that's beginning to happen. And then also, having him get us involved on the curriculum committee as well. So yeah, there's overlap there. Yeah.
So I see everyone in the Western New York area as being sort of the primary stakeholders in all of this. And when I say get the medical community out, it's in all different forms. It's a lot of what Archana was talking about, but also working with the the businesses in the area. How can we promote healthier food, making healthier foods available, more exercise and activity space? How can we promote businesses, or how can we help businesses be more eco-friendly? All of those things, so that everybody's thinking about not only their stockholders, but their stockholders, but also their stakeholders, and making sure that they keep all the stakeholders, healthy and vibrant, and with full of vitality. So that's, again, as you said, Dan, it's a city of good neighbors, and hopefully a city of good health. And I think creating that would be part of this, is getting a momentum going and creating a culture. It's kind of like, the culture that we have, with Bill's Mafia, everybody kind of getting behind that. The same thing is, let's get everyone kind of really, all in on this vision of a city of good neighbors and a healthy environment.
A community moonshot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wait, I want to hear what
Listen.
Kim has to say.
Yeah,
Oh.
Kim, what do you think? What?
I'm blown away by this presentation. Just so inspired. I think, I knew little bits and pieces of your work, actually, but this just took it to another level. And I had a lot of reflection. So I have a new client who has an inner city gym. And her thing is really making a fun environment so plus size women will actually go to the gym. And I did not think of when I'm working with her to help her make this business successful, I didn't think of the health implications on our community of this, right? And, like you said, the businesses are a part of it. And she wouldn't even dream that she's part of this health community, right? And we have to connect her in. And you really got me thinking about that, how broad this is and important this is to our community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another, you reminded me, Kim, of something else that Archana showed. She showed the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid is counseling. And I learned this the hard way, because I headed our cardiac rehab program for 45 years, and then also headed our wellness program. And it's not counseling and telling people, not smoking or eating, a lot of processed foods is bad for you. It doesn't really move the needle very much. Maybe if they've had bypass surgery or a stent or something, that's maybe that plus some counseling moves the needle. But there's just too much friction out in our environment, in the ecosystem that Archana was talking about. We live in somewhat of a toxic environment, and I know Roger, you have the book there, The Myth of Normal, and he talks about everything in our environment that affects us, starting from birth. So we really have to start thinking about how we intervene early. And the only way we can do that is to get out into the community, not just instead of just sitting back in the office and waiting for someone to get, sick. And as I think I might have mentioned at the very beginning, we call prevention, screening. So we pick up disease early. That's just not enough. It's not enough, guys. We got to prevent that. It's wasted time to just do the screening. Let's move upstream and really, prevent disease from actually occurring, so we don't have to do all that screening.
I just want to add, before I know we are at the end of it, but this is exciting. And I want to quote Margaret Mead, who said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world."
Thank you.
Right.
You're giving me a little bit of hope here.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea.
Roger knows I get discouraged sometimes because I think this is so important, but to get people, they're so busy, and that I kind of use that analogy. I use this analogy when I would talk to patients too. It's like you get a flat tire, and instead of stopping and changing the tire, you say, "I'm too busy. I'm just going to keep driving." And you just keep driving on with the flat tire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, another quote by Winston Churchill comes to mind, who said, "Never let a crisis go to waste."
Right.
So that's another thing. And to end with Frank Rooney, who said, "Take a pause," because that helps. I forget the exact words, but it was like, passion cools, civility gets oxygen, and wisdom finds wings when you take a pause. So I'm so grateful for being a part of this, and I just feel really, really blessed. Thank you.
Well, Archana, thank you, and thank you. I'm thinking, Robert, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, this is really an easy read. It's not long. It's flows very easily, and it really does sort of talk about what the system around what we're talking about here. Although again, the difference is this is more where the anchor institutes are not just concentrated on one center like the campus, but out really integrated in the community. And the innovation district is not just the campus and the surrounding area, but really all of Western New York. And it can even go beyond that, or at least be as this is, a model for other cities and other areas. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm personally very excited about it, and and the more I hear from you guys, the more I get excited.
Yes. So I'm thinking, Archana, I love that quote on "take a pause." Can you who's the what's the reference on that one?
It's a journalist called Frank Rooney.
Frank Rooney.
Yeah, it says passion cools, civility gets oxygen, and wisdom gets wings.
Love it. I have a book. I think I can put that in. Great quote for that. So I tell you what, let's do. I will see Dr. Snyder tomorrow. I'm thinking that let's take December off because of the holidays, but I'm going to see if I can would it make sense for me to have him come in and talk about community of excellence and stuff in January. Okay, Dan's saying yes, good. Okay, so I will talk with him tomorrow about that. Any other things for the good of the order? So Archana, I was advocating with my daughter last night, as far as coming up here, and I think we could get her fiance a job out here as an engineer. So thank you all for that. Dan, I just want to check with you. Robert and I are going to be submitting our article for the biopsychosocial. Are you interested in being a reviewer?
Sure.
Okay, great, good. And then I'm going to shoot you an email. I'll just need your title and stuff like that, but I'll get that from you later. And then Robert, why don't you stay on, and Dave, why don't you stay on afterwards when we jump? We have a couple of little quick things. Robert, you're going to say something.
I was just going to ask Dan to please be. We want you to be critical. We want you to. We want critical feedback.
Okay.
We don't want to. Oh, they're good guys.
And you chose that journal because?
Uh, oh, I didn't actually, I mentioned it because I had done some editing for them.
Okay.
Or I had reviewed manuscripts for them. Somehow they got my name, and so they asked me to. It's an online journal. It's actually a pretty nice
Yeah.
online journal. It's very well presented. But see, I'm a senior editor for the Journal of Cardiovascular Ultrasound and Allied Techniques, and it's Dr. Nabananda was the chief editor. He's no longer the chief editor, but I think he gave my name to the editors of the Journal of the American Association of Indian Physicians, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
So that's how I got.
Yeah,
And
I'm just wondering if, would there be a medical education journal that Dr. Jennifer Macca could recommend, so it kind of infuses into medical education? Because I'm not sure how it would pop up on people's radar, because it's a wonderful, wonderful article, but how do we get it within people's radar?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's set in stone. They're waiting for us to send it back. I don't know, Roger, if you want to ask, or Dan, if you want re-review it, and because we
Okay.
did do some editing on it.
Yeah.
I did considerable amount of editing on my side, because it wasn't, I just sort of put it together very quickly. And then when I went back and I looked at it, I said, yeah, that needs a little.
Archana, your thoughts on where it might go? And I'm sorry to kind of throw a wrench into things. I just want to
It's okay.
think about how we can have impact and infuse.
One of the things we can do is, let me send you a link about, just putting in the abstract, and the website spits out which could be some of the journals that this belongs to.
Have you seen the article, Archana?
Is that the one that Dr. Farstein shared when it was at, which was like white paper, called it at that point?
Maybe
So
we'll resend it just to take another look at it. And see what you think. Those are all good thoughts. Maybe we didn't pick the right. We went to the path of least resistance, I think.
Yeah, we wanted to get it out there, so yeah, and that's interesting too. And I'm just wondering how the search engines pick it up depending on the journals. But Dan, I exactly hear what you're saying. So
I think there's something called like medical educator is one of the ones.
Medical educator, but it is really rigid in its, like the acceptance rate is low. So it might be helpful to, I forget the name of the website that does that. Do you remember, Dan? Did you just put in the abstract, and it kind of at least gives you a list of journals that that this could belong in. And then one can obviously read out where, the ones that have what kind of acceptance, both like medical teacher, and there are others that are there which it could definitely belong in. Academic medicine, as you said, but I think it might be helpful to just take a look at that. Another one that is always used is the MedEd portal. And a lot of
articles, there's that for.
So we could always, there was a workshop that was done, right? There were many workshops that were done. So if we can, the article can be incorporated in that with sort of outlines of the workshop. And then MedEd portal is something that is really used by a lot of educators in medicine.
Okay.
And for that, it is, it's something that would definitely reach the audience that we are targeting. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah, I just haven't, I agree with MedEd Portal as an opportunity, and I like the idea of putting that abstract into something.
Mhm.
Okay.
The other person that you might want to consider as a reviewer is actually Amanda Rahman, who works with Jennifer Mecca. I don't think Jennifer has the bandwidth, but Amanda works. But I'm not quite sure how you pick reviewers these days, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, that you guys have brought up an important point, and that is, the audience. And I don't know if you would agree, but taking a biopsychosocial approach to patients is not something that older physicians like me are gonna, clam onto. We're stuck in the biologic. It's the young physicians and those in training that would be most impacted by this, because they're more open-minded to it. By the time you get to be my age, it's everything's kind of cemented in. It's hard to kind of break out of that biological or reductionist approach. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but that's my fear.
So, okay. So what do you, so Robert, why don't we, let's ponder this as,
So my point is, what journal
oh, okay.
would a younger audience be looking at?
One of them, which has a very, high acceptability, is Curious, and it is something which has really gone up in readership that's there, and it is sort of listed in PubMed. It's CUREUS, and it really has reviewers that are at all levels. It's easy to become a reviewer there, but and the turnaround is like super quick.
Okay.
That's another, and it does have readership. There was a time when I said, a publication may be wasted per se if you give it to a journal that has such quick, like people haven't looked at it more in detail. But I realized with the way Curious, about 5 years ago, people would, frown upon it being published in Curious, but it's an online journal and it has got awesome readership.
Okay.
So that may be another one to look at.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just kind of Googled it, and that might, what you're trying to do is try to create aha moments and sparks in an audience that wants it. And somebody that would read Curious might be one of those individuals.
Okay. All right. Well, Robert, why don't we think about that? Think about that on your plane ride out to LA. So you'll have a few minutes there, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. This is really helpful. So, okay. So we will plan to reconvene in January. Take a breather. Is that okay? We'll take December off.
What day was it that you said? I missed
I'm
that.
looking at January 19th. We're kind of shooting for the third Thursday of the month is what we've been working on. And I'll see Ken tomorrow. And if Ken is not able to do that, I'll kind of put something out your way, and we'll figure it out or continue with this. This is just so good, such great stuff. Archana, Robert, thank you for incredible presentations.
So
this is really inspiring.
Roger, since Dan and Archana is still here, we have a question, because this is something that I've not done anywhere else.
Right.
And that is taking a diagram, off the internet and putting it into the article. And the question is about copyrights and when you have to get permission, and how do you identify it?
So Robert, I think to
How
that
do you
point,
reference it or whatever?
yeah, I mean,
And a
we're looking,
couple of the ones that we have are on websites. They're not from articles. They're just a website thing.
and it's the biopsychosocial model. And so it
Yeah.
seems to be, in looking at it, and Robert, you've had me, so we have the biopsychosocial model there, and then we have 21st century creative problem solving. Well, 21st century creative problem solving isn't a problem. We can reference that, but is the biosocial, psychosocial, is that more in the public domain? Or is it, and so that's the thing that Robert and I are looking at, is like, we want to put that model in there, but who owns it? So and so I talked to Susan Keller Mathers, and she said, well, you need to talk to the publisher of the or the author, but I can't seem to find publishers for it, or it's so out there.
Just on a website, and
Yeah.
people, it's like a blog almost.
I'm just wondering whether you can just reference that blog, and then
Yeah.
the day that you access that blog.
Yeah.
I think that could be it, but sometimes that can still be an issue, because I remember when I was writing this chapter in about Are You Game, about gamification. I wanted to use the Peanuts comic, and I called, it was on the website and I had referenced it, but I just wanted to be doubly sure. So I reached out to the, what's the name? It's blanking out on me. Who's the
Schultz. Yeah.
Schultz. So
Right,
I
right.
reached out to people who manage his sort of copyright issues, and they refused it. I said it was for educational purposes, but they didn't give me permission.
Yeah, that's a different situation. I went through that too. We put together a book of cartoons for Sid Parnes back in the 70s, the 80s. He was using cartoons in his presentation, and we had to go and reference all of these and get permission for them. That's owned by that organization. I mean, that's and so we got refusals too on some of them. We pulled stuff from the New Yorker, those sorts of things. But this model seems to be more out there in the public domain. I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Archana. And it's like, I just can't seem to find, we can't seem to find. So whose model is it? Because clearly the Peanuts cartoons is the property of Charles Schultz, so, but is this biopsychosocial model the property of anybody?
Is it the Engels model that you're talking about, Richard Engels?
Yeah.
I mean, that has been published in many journals. So we could just look at one of the journals where it has been published, where it was originally published, and just ask for their permission.
Okay.
The ones that we picked, though, I like it because they have specific, examples and very good examples in each of the spheres. I don't know about George Engels, whether he has, or this is just not the round circles.
Can you just, I forget what it looked like. Do you mind sharing it? And this way, what we can do is look at the, if it was in a blog, then one can always look at the owners of the blog, right?
Yeah.
Well, we do have the owners of that one blog, the first one that I sent to you, Roger. They're in California.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be the way. They don't have a, I don't know.
Here I can actually share. I have it here, Robert. Thanks for taking your time too, guys. So that's and did you have attribution? So that's what we're looking at.
That's one of them. That's
you like that one, right?
Yeah. There was one before that was yeah.
Well, This seems to be much more public domain than, and then I couldn't find a copyright on any of this, so. Well, Robert, why don't we just get the reference for this? We'll put it into the paper. We'll see what, we'll do some double checking around on it, and I mean, if the journal says it and sees it and says, hey, guys, they might bounce it, we might have to take it further from there, so. But it just seems to be out there so much, so.
Is recreating it, or adopting a similar model that big of a deal?
I think, again, if you add to it and sort of rethink it or reframe it with some of your thoughts, then it becomes yours, right?
Robert, I think that's a really neat idea. We can have Cassie put together different model.
I think that's a lot easier.
Yeah, but let's add your stuff into there, Robert. Let's add some of your.
All right, I'll look at it and then.
So
yeah.
take your circles when you're on your airplane and draw it, and and we'll do something else, and then we'll publish in this journal. I like it. Yeah, because I think you have stuff to add to it that isn't necessarily on this particular model that would enrich it and would make it so. And if you can say adapt it, we can then say adapt it for the biopsychosocial model on Engel. So
I'll
guys.
definitely make sure we have spirituality on there.
See, there we go. Yeah, and I'm not seeing it here on this one. No, yeah, nice. All right, good friends. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for recording this. David, if you could stay on for just a second. And Robert, safe travels to you. And when you rough something out, send it back and we'll have Cassie go to work on it and we'll take it from there. And so thanks for these journal considerations, guys. We'll keep mulling that around too. So although I do like this format that we're able to get all of us together, I do miss sitting around my dining room table with you. So, but that's here we go. This is a virtual dining room table.
Not to mention Archana's treats that she always.
Oh, her treats. Oh my God, yeah, I tell you, that jalapeno dip, I still love that. So, all right, everybody, be safe.
Thanks for
Archana,
great presentation, Dan. Thanks for attending and giving us inspiration.
Yeah,
thank you, Dave.
Good. Be safe, everybody. So,
Yeah.
Happy
all right.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Thanks to
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Go save the world, everybody.